People fleeing their homes due to the appearance of the Titans. Unable to match the overwhelming force of the Titans, humanity was forced to sail to a new world. At this time, most of humanity had been annihilated, but the majority of this was at the hands of their fellow humans. Those who gained passage aboard the ships were only a small fraction composed of the rich and powerful. The voyage was rough. About half vanished without reaching the shore. In the new world, great walls had previously been prepared. This new continent we shall revere as sacred. Within these walls are the ideals of humanity. Within these walls, let us create a world eternally without strife.
Well, that was a load of shit.
Hello everybody, welcome to Attack on Titan episode 57, I think? I'm not even sure. Anyway, this is a crazy episode, there's so many things to talk about, and yeah, this video is probably gonna be really fucking long. Grab my hand, okay? Because I know it's gonna be super confusing, but I'm here for you, okay? I'm here for you, so I'm just gonna explain everything to you, recontextualize a bunch of old scenes with this new information that we have, and then I might talk about some controversial stuff. Having said that, there's been a lot of things that were cuts in this adaptation, like I was expecting, you know, because there was so much dialogue. Pretty much every scene has like at least like one line that was like missing, and it was just really confusing. I was like making notes of like, oh, they cut this, and it's just like, oh my god, like they cut so much that I can't just point it out. It's easier for me if I just have the manga like going on here and I just read a couple of pages to you. Having said that, let's just jump into it, okay? So this episode continues from where we left off. Now the kids are outside the gates and we have like these additional close-ups on like the buildings and a bunch of people and cars. We see a bunch of cars. In the manga we barely saw this fucking thing. If the blimp was not enough of a clue, these guys are way more advanced than the people in the walls. Having said that, man, that car is probably way fucking slow compared to the crazy horses in Attack on Titan. An interesting change from the manga is the guy they bumped into is the first person in the anime that says the word Eldians. That's not in the manga. In the manga, I think it's Kruger in the next scene. Anyway, they go to see that blimp, and this is the hidden frame that we see in the opening. It looks beautiful. And Faye, she's looking at that and she's like, wow, this is amazing. And unfortunately, they're not alone. And you see two soldiers, and we find out their names later in the episode. The fat guy with the Super Mario mustache. I think his mustache is like slightly different in the manga. He's even more Super Mario-esque in the anime. And that guy's name is Gross. More like gross, am I right? Yeah, funny, no. And the other one is the Owl, and his name is Kruger. They immediately notice that these guys have the armband, so it's like, hey man, you're an Eldian. Do you have permission to be around this area? And they didn't, which is fucking weird that Grisha's trying to find stuff. Like, no, you don't have, like, you're stalling for time. It's not gonna work out. Kruger goes up to Grisha and is like, yeah, how's it gonna be? Is it gonna be a beating or labor? And Grisha wants a beating because he doesn't want to bother his parents. That's what Kruger implies. And then he asks to take the same punishment or beating for Faye. And he's like, alright. And he immediately just starts like kicking this kid, and it's pretty gruesome. But the real gruesome shit is Gross, who grabs Faye and takes her away, promises he's gonna take her to the gate in Liberio. And in the manga, the last shots that you see him taking her, it really feels final. And the anime is a little bit more casual, but in the manga it's like, oh dude, that's a goodbye. It's interesting because in the manga recently, there's like a panel for a character that was very similar to this. You know, so anyway, Faye didn't return home, and the next day they find her body. Unsurprisingly, the anime censored this, but yeah, it's pretty gruesome. But yeah, we immediately cut back to a scene where Gross is talking with the Jaeger family. What I really like about this whole situation is how immediately after this we have the big exposition scene, but I really like how that exposition scene is integrated with the storyline that's going on right now. Like, Ross is talking with these fuckers, and have you been teaching your stupid kid our history correctly? And that's why we have the recap. Grisha already knows, but we don't know, and I think it's well integrated. But yeah, Grisha is looking at this fucking asshole, and he's talking about how, oh man, I put your kid in the front gates of Liberio, and that's it, you know, I have work to do. But then Grisha's like, no, you don't have any work to do. You were fucking lazing around before. you're fucking lying, and my mom is crying, but my dad is just demeaning himself to these soldiers, and later he calls him a dog. Grisha is like so unsympathetic, and this episode definitely doesn't portray him in a good light, and I think it's very important. But yeah, like Grisha just looks at this whole scene. He looks at Gross, he looks at his father, and he's so angry that it makes him dizzy. And the anime cuts this little scene where Kruger looks at Grisha when he's doing his hate face. And that's interesting, because I think it's relevant for the next episode. But yeah, they cut that. Anyway, exposition time. What is going on in Attack on Titan? So, Marley was a big, cool country, right? Or continent or whatever, and they were, they were great. The great nation are like, hell yeah, man, we're cool, yeah. And one day, this girl named Fritz, she was an Eldian, she was walking around, and then she noticed some monster thing, and she was like, hey man, are you hungry? Here's an apple. And the other was an apple. Oh, yeah, it's pretty cool. I like this apple. Hey man, I'm gonna give you some cool powers. And that's what happened. If you notice, like, all the depictions of this event, she's the one that's offering an apple, not the other way around. So I don't know, man, maybe this guy was hungry or something. That's my interpretation. After that, Ymir gains this incredible amount of power, the power of the Titans. And in the manga, she has nipples. That's pretty much where Ymir's story ends. That is the Marlyean history or the Marlyean propaganda. If you take into account the Eldian history, what does that say? Well, it talks about how Ymir used her power to bring wealth, to enrich people, build bridges, cultivated wastelands. She did a bunch of good stuff. And I feel like that information doesn't necessarily negate what the Marlyean history was saying. There's definitely a picture of Ymir in her Titan form, and it looks like there's these soldiers going to attack her. That picture might be wrong. If you grab this whole story about how Ymir was doing all this good stuff with Eldia, and you put it with the Marlyean history, then you have, okay, she made a contract, she did good stuff, and then she died, and then the 9 Titans showed up, right? And then those guys did the bad things, as Grisha's father describes the Dark Ages. But before I even progress a little bit further, we've seen this whole event before. The girl giving an apple to the devil, fucking season 2 ED, obviously. But more interestingly is Freda's book in the Uprising arc, season 3 part 1, where you have this scene specifically where Freda is with Historia and they're reading this book and they're looking, and apparently in the book this girl is referred to as Krista. I don't know what's going on there. I have no idea. Initially when I saw that, I was like, what the fuck, that's fucking wrong, because I knew it's Ymir Fritz. Why are you calling this girl Krista? But I forgot that information is also in the manga. It's in a different deleted scene, but the anime, even though they're doing so many cuts, they sneaked this information in, which makes me think that this information is important. That this girl is also named Krista. If this was a plot hole or something, I feel like they would have cut that, right? But no, they preserved this, so I think it might be important. Anyway, that's not really relevant. What's more interesting is that how, even in that book, they also referred to Ymir as this good person that was helping people, and Historia should be more like her, right? And that's why, she has the whole Krista personality, but, she was a very helpful girl, ladylike, and everyone liked her, and she was cool, yada, yada, yada. I feel like that's the narrative that we have right now with Ymir Fritz, that she herself was like a good person, right? And then she died, and then the Dark Ages began. And what are Dark Ages, So apparently, somehow, her soul was split into 9 Titans, and these were the guys that later built the Empire of Eldia. And it was these Eldians that destroyed Marley and ruled the continents. And this is where we also dropped the big title, which is Subjects of Ymir. So what are Subjects of Ymir? Subjects of Ymir are the people that can turn into Titans. Now, the title of Subject of Ymir and Eldians is going to be said interchangeably. People are going to refer as if they're the same thing. They're not necessarily the same thing. Because, as far as I know, and this is up for interpretation, the way I consider this is that Eldia is a nationality, but the Subject of Ymir is the actual race of people that can turn into Titans. If you remember, in Season 3 Part 1, the conversation that Grandpa Hackerman was having with Kenny, they talk about how the people in the walls are part of this majority bloodline, the Subjects of Ymir, and the nobles that are ruling there, the fake king too, more on that guy later, the Hackermans and the Asians, they're all part of other families. Well, the Asians are they're Asians, and they're not even the same nationality, but the other families, including the Hackermans and the other nobles, those guys are considered Eldians? I think that's how I interpret that. Maybe you consider that differently, but I think it's important to say that subject of Ymir. Now, the term subject of Ymir, I discovered this very recently by pure chance. I was reading the character guidebooks, and apparently the subject of Ymir was a term that was said like all the way back in the first OVA with Ilsa Lackner, the girl that was writing and she saw the Titan that spoke. I remember seeing that OVA like years ago, and the translation didn't say the subject of Ymir, it said Ymir's people. I read the manga too, I think that's chapter like 18.5, and the translation that I had was also not using subject of Ymir. But then I finally saw the official translation and in the guidebook, and they said subject of Ymir. It's that term. So Isayama planned that whole subject of Ymir stuff all the way back in chapter 18.5. That's crazy. That's crazy. And people say that Isayama's not planning stuff. Fuck you, Danny from Pingrams. I think it was him that was saying something like that. He's clearly making up as it goes along. Fuck you. That is not the case at all. Anyway, the subject of Ymir and the Nine Titans, according to Marley history, they designated all other people and races as inferior and began to oppress them. They stole away lands and possessions, wiping many bloodlines out entirely. I think this is not in the anime. Eldians forced other people to have their children so that Ymir would have more subjects. This specific translation is very curious to me because we know that Ymir is dead by this point in time. So I feel like this line is not really correct. But having said that, I know that in Japanese, when the guy is talking, I hear Ymir no Tami, something like that, and that is subject of Ymir. So even though the subtitles are more correct, he's actually saying this stuff. So I don't know. They just wanted big numbers for big boys. This ethnic cleansing lasted for 1,700 years or something. It's pretty bad. But around like 80 years ago or something, Eldia was very arrogant, and a couple of Marlyean dudes began to plot against them from within, and they began instigating this civil war, which, you know, weakened Eldia. But more importantly, this is how Marley got back 7 Titans. And when we say got back, again, only subjects of Ymir are the people that can turn into Titans. So these 7 guys that have these Titans, they are subjects of Ymir, but they actually agreed to work with Marley. Anyway, this is 80 years ago. This is called the Great Titan War. And during that time, the holder of the founding Titan, his name is King Fritz, which for some reason the anime just refuses to call him King Fritz. They just say Eldian King or just King. It's incredibly weird. But he is King Fritz, and King Fritz was like, yo, fuck this shit. I don't like what we're doing here. And he just fucked off to Paradis. That's the name of the walls. Paradis. They say Paradis. I feel like I probably should pronounce it like that. I don't know. I'm gonna say Paradis. You tell me. But that's where he built the walls, and he took a bunch of people with him, and that's exactly what happened with the Uprising arc. The whole making the walls, doing the memory wipe on those guys. That's how everything connects there. But he didn't take all Eldians, you know, the non-Marley Eldians that remains. The king abandoned them and left them on the continent, which it's Africa. Yeah, it's Africa, and the walls are in Madagascar. Anyway, this is cuts in the anime, and I'm just gonna read it to you. It's Grisha's dad is still talking, and it says, it would have been fitting for Marley to eradicate us all, you know, the remaining Eldians. But the fact that we expected that only shows that we are descendants from devils. Instead, the tolerant people of Marley showed us mercy. They gave us land we could live on. So Grisha's like looking at his father, and he's just like, wow, you're really talkative for a guy that just lost their own daughter. That's, you look like a dog. And then he starts talking all, yo, all that shit you're talking about, ethnic cleansing, I can say that fucking word. All that shit you're saying, I didn't do anything. I just went out for a walk. This is unfair. This is fucked up. And Grisha's dad, all he has to say is that, like, it doesn't matter. All it takes is a rumor. And specifically, he says, the rumor, like, the Jaeger family distrusts and despises the public security authorities. All it would take is a rumor like that, and we'd be done for. That's all it takes for us to be sent to heaven or paradise. Translation for the manga, they keep saying heaven. It's just paradise, guys. Because that's, you know, what paradise is. Also, that's what Uri was talking about with Kenny in Season 3 Part 1. I want to build a paradise. Yeah, literally, that's what he did. Because, you know, he was possessed by the king's ideology. The first king. That's what they called him, the first king. And technically, he is the first king. The first king of Rice. Because technically, he's actually the 145th King Fritz. Anyway, Grisha's dad just begs him to not do anything. All that we can do is just live modest, quiet lives, and that's it. And please, Grisha, don't bring your parents the same fate that befell Faye. What I really like about this whole episode is that, like, it's accompanied by adult Grisha narrating this stuff. And that guy is more self-aware, he's more reflective. Who was in the wrong? Me or the world? It was probably both. That's an older Grisha, right? I think the Grisha from these chapters, he wouldn't say It was both. It's not me, it's the world. The world did wrong. But now Grisha is like, yeah, I understand that the world is fucked up, but I really shouldn't drag my sister inside. That was so irresponsible. It's unfair that this oppression is occurring, but I was foolish. I was ignorant. And that's how you leave that scene, and you have like a montage with slightly older Grisha, and these guys are throwing bottles, and you have this guy like helping Grisha out. Anyway, now Grisha is older, like 18. He's making plans of being a doctor and taking over his dad's clinic, and the fated day happens where this guy named, well, I guess it's Grice now. I keep calling him Grease, but you know, he notices that he has this cross-shaped cuts. And it's like, what the fuck is this? Oh, well, you know, I'm a patriot, bro. Hey, man, I have this information about your sister's death. You know, like if you want to know more, join our cause, right? And that's what happens. You know, Grisha is told about this. An interesting thing that was cut is this narration where Grisha says, "I worked in the field of medicine, and I bore a deep hatred for the Marlyean government. The underground anti-establishment group known as the Eldia restorationists took note of these 2 points, and then came to recruit me." Those 2 points is what made these guys seek Grisha, which is interesting. That was cut. Not that it's essential, but what is interesting is the truth of his sister's death. Like, you have the screenshots, and combined with information we learn later on, that is Gross, and around him, Gross's children that are doing this shit with these fucking dogs. This is the worst death in Attack on Titan for me. Absolutely. The level of cruelty, this is so wrong in so many levels. And this is being done to an 8-year-old girl. She's being eaten alive by dogs, okay? Mike or Mike, whatever you want to pronounce that guy's name. Yeah, that guy had a pretty bad death. But, you know, he's not a little girl. And it's Titans, it's not dogs. Dogs, bro. Like, it's just, even the dogs are mean and racist. Like, it's just... But the interesting thing, and shocking thing, and the thing that should make you like, hey, oh, what the fuck? Is that Grisha says this. I made a vow to myself. I'd teach them who the true devils were. What our ancestors had done was right. This is insane to me. He's saying this shit before he has the Eldian history, okay? He's saying that their ancestors were right in doing the fucking ethnic cleansing or whatever, killing a bunch of bloodlines and shit. He's saying that that was correct. What? That is wrong. That is wrong, man. Anyway, this is what ultimately makes him join the cause. And as you can see, a bunch of the people in the background of this episode are Titans from previous seasons. We have an incredibly obvious one that I'm going to mention later. More importantly is the bearded guy, the Santa Claus looking guy, because he's the Santa Claus looking Titan. This is the guy that if he ate Eren correctly, if he actually bit Eren instead of just swallowing him whole, this guy would have been the main character for the show. We would have the story court and then this grandpa dude, which is pretty funny. Anyway, they start getting these weapons and funds and historical documents from the Owl. This is where we have this information about how Ymir Fritz was doing a bunch of stuff. You can really look at the pictures. You can like do these assumptions because when Grisha is actually confronted, like, hey man, how do you know this? Like, yeah, I'm barely reading this. Which is also a wrong thing. He believes in what he wants to believe. What is the truth? The truth lies somewhere in the middle. So, I don't know, Grisha. This is kind of the wrong attitude. Anyway, immediately after this speech, this lady comes up and she is Dina Fritz, a descendant of the royal family. There was a branch of the royal family that refused to flee to the islands at the end of the Great Titan War and stayed on the continent. She was now the only descendant of that group. There's no more royal blood people outside the walls. Her family waited for the day that Eldia would rise again, hiding in the internment zone with her knowledge of the Titans. The information she brought to the restorationists was nothing short of a path to victory. The founding Titan, which King Fritz took with him inside the walls, that is the key to the Eldian restorationists. The founding Titan has the ability to rule and control all other Titans. If only we can get our hands on it, we'll be able to destroy Marley once more. But then, just like his story was like, if there's this founding Titan that has this crazy power, why isn't this guy stopping Titans? Now we have Greece being like, hey, if the King Fritz has this power, why is he retreating to the island? What the fuck is going on with this bitch-ass king? Well, he's refusing to fight. That's the information that we had in the Uprising arc. He refused to fight. He thought it was okay to be ruled by Titans, right? And now we have this information that he's just refusing to fight. The Great Titan War began when the 145th king inherited the founding Titan. Even before then, the families fighting over 8 titans had been locked in constant conflict for generations. Yet, as long as the royal family could summon the founding titan, order was maintained. But the 145th king abandoned those duties and moved the capital to a remote island. The royal family in the continent could not agree with this, and they parted ways. These pitiful days, these years of suffering, all started when the king turned away from conflict. The king doesn't want to fight. The king refuses to fight. Remember when Grisha went up to the royal family to eat them, and you just find these guys praying or whatever in that fucking underground cave or whatever? Like, instead of, Freda using her powers to stop the invasion, the king doesn't want to fight. The king just wants paradise, and that's it. He just wants paradise to last a little bit longer. That's all he wants. For some reason, he doesn't want to actively stop the oppression of the Eldians. It's like he thinks it's correct they're being oppressed. But that's how this connects with the Uprising arc. There was a whole thing about royal-blooded people inheriting the Founding Titan and being possessed by the king's ideology. This is the same king. It's the same guy. This happened with Rod and Uri's dad. This happened with Uri himself. This happened with Freda. These guys were all possessed. Uri and Freda specifically, they had the desire to use the Founding Titans to send back the Titans. But the moment they were possessed by this ideology, they stopped doing that. Having said that, Freda's scenes with Astoria, Freda has the Founding Titan in those scenes. Like, she has that guy inside of her or whatever. That sounded wrong. But anyway, like, she's still acting like a girl, She's not like, oh, I am a dude and I am King Fritz. But she's still sometimes... This is cut in the anime, but sometimes she would get like possessed or something like that. I think we might see this actually in the next episodes, but it was actually shown much earlier. But that's what's going on, right? Don't forget that. That's how all of this connects. This king, for some reason, just doesn't want to do anything, and he's forcing other people in the royal family to think like him. Anyway, these guys, they don't know about this ideology thing. So they're just like, let's just get in there, grab that Founding Titan, and give it to the true royal family. Because the other ones, I guess, are not considered true royal family because they abandoned Eldia or some bullshit like that. So, they're like, yeah, my brothers, let's do this, yeah. Dina, or Dina, apparently that's how they pronounce it, hugs Grisha because she gets really emotional, and we hard cuts to them being married and having a baby. They have a son, and their name is Zeke. Yeah, Zeke Jaeger. Yes, that Zeke. Anyway, immediately when Zeke is born, Grisha's first words are, a child with royal blood. I'm sure he'll one day help us lead to victory. Instead of being like, oh my god, my boy is beautiful. I'm really proud of, I'm gonna be a good dad. No, he's not talking about that at all. Thanks, Dad. And this is where a lot of things were cut in the anime. And I don't know if this is really essential, actually. If I really think about it, I don't think these cuts were like a big deal, but it's a big cut. I'm just gonna read the whole panel. It's actually multiple pages. So the scene that had a lot of cuts is the scene where you have the Marlyeans announcing the creation of the warrior program. I'm gonna read the manga version that is way more in depth. Listen careful, Eldians. We, the Marleyan government, have decided to gather warriors of Marley from among you, the subject of Ymir. This is what's super cut. We have received a proclamation from King Fritz, that incarnation of evil who fled to the island of Paradise. He claimed that soon, Eldia would rule the world and once again control the continent through reign of terror. So this is a lie. They're lying to the Eldians in Marley about this stuff, the king that never said that. We must smash these despicable ambitions of his to pieces, and that is why we will spend years selecting warriors from internment zones around the continent. Healthy boys and girls from age 5 to 7 will be gathered as potential warriors. However, only a small few will become the chosen warriors. Remember Reiner, Bertold, and Annie? They were 5 to 7 when they joined a program like this and became the warriors. That is a crazy young age, isn't it? To be indoctrinated and forced into this kind of life. They barely had a childhood. That is sad. And no wonder that he has Bertold saying spawn of the devil when he's really angry, because he's forced to believe in that stuff. And this is why Reiner, when he was talking with Annie, and he was like, are you feeling compassion for this filthy race or whatever? And then he says, more importantly, if you want to prove that you and your father are any different from this race, then you gotta do this and this and this. Why does she have to prove? Well, because they're literally the same race. They are all the same race. It's just they think they're superior because they are Marley. That's the indoctrination. That is the real ass brainwashing. Anyway, continuing from this scene, these warriors must be worthy of inheriting the 7 titans now under Marley's control. So again, there were 9 titans, correct? There's only 7. So one of them is the founding titan. What is the other one? It's the one that the owl has. So what are these 7 titans they have? Most of them we actually know. It's the colossal, the armored, the female, the beast, Ymir's Titan, presumably the backpack Titan. But this is 6. There's one missing to make 7. What is this Titan? I don't know, but it's with Marley. Furthermore, the families of these chosen warriors will be given the title of honorary Marlyeans. We will ensure their freedom within this country. So this is why this is really appealing to a lot of people, to force the children into this program. That they all, including the family, will gain status as citizens and won't be as oppressed. I'm sure they'll probably be oppressed anyway. So you Eldians, it's time for you to show your alliance to Marley. And then we have a little bit of conversation that was cut in the anime as well. They're discussing like, hey, why did King Fritz declare war? Is that really true? And she's like, no, that's probably bullshit. I don't think that information specifically is important. So that's why this was cut. Anyway, a message from the owl arrives, and this is where he says that the real reason, and Marley is doing this stuff, is because they want to be the first to adapt to the oncoming struggles over resources. As you know, the world is having like these crazy advances in military technology in the recent years, and you have this picture with planes and boats, and Marley now is using the power of the Titans, just like Eldia. But they fear that the position as leader of the world will one day no longer be absolute. Eventually, they could make a weapon that is good against Titans. You know, that is a fear that they have. And the Marley is sure that there will be an age where military power is going to be backed by fuel. Apparently, Paratus has a bunch of resources. Not just the founding Titan that is very appealing, but Paratus also has fossil fuels. But conquering the island is not an easy feat, because the actual last thing that the King Fritz said, you know, besides the lies, he actually threatened the entire world. He was like, if you interfere with our affairs, I'm going to release a bunch of Titans from inside the walls that are going to flatten the entire Earth. Now, in the anime, they actually reuse these shots from the Season 2 ED with a bunch of Titans walking around, and it's like, they don't look like Colossal Titans. And they are supposed to look like the Colossal Titans. That guy, that Titan in the walls in Season 1, that is a Colossal Titan. Not the Colossal Titan. It's not Bertold, but it looks like him, right? And in the anime, they don't look like that. And it's really, really weird, because in the manga, you best assured there's a bunch of Colossal Titans. So I feel like, with the context that I know about the ED, like I know even more of what's going on there, I thought those guys were not, you know, these Colossal Titans in the walls. I thought they were just normal Titans. So that is really weird to me. In fact, I think it's kind of an error. I would say so, but you know, not really relevant. Essentially, Marley and the Eldia restorationists want to do the same thing, which is enter the walls without provoking King Fritz and retake the founding Titan. But now that they have the same plans, they're like, oh my god, what the fuck can we do, right? But don't worry, Grisha has a great plan that is not going to backfire whatsoever. And it's to use their own kid. And a lot of people have noticed, yes, Zeke has a monkey toy, yes. What I can say about this toys is that it's not going to be the last time we're going to see those toys. And not that that is a crazy plot thing, it's just like, we're going to be back, surprisingly enough. But yeah, Grisha forces his kid into this stuff, and the chapter ends with Zeke coming in, just pointing at them, and like, uh-oh, betray them. And they're going to be sent to Paratus. So that is chapter 86. Chapter 87 actually starts with a scene where you have Grisha and Dina, like actually indoctrinating their own kid. They're forcing all these books, and they're talking about the true history of the Eldians. What's really great, and the anime really did a fantastic shot where you have like the shot of Zeke just saying, yes, I understand, and then it transitions to Grisha's when he was a kid, and you know, he's talking about how I should have known, of all people, just how sinful it is for a parent to indoctrinate their own children. I was doing the same thing that was done to me. How could I not see that? Because you were blind. Grisha at this point was so blind by his pain and rage that he's just such a bad person. He got a major wake-up call, right? Anyway, dare I say, I never once treated Zeke as Zeke, only as a child with royal blood and the hope of the Eldian restorationists. In any case, Zeke abandoned his parents who willingly exposed their own child to danger. He chose the safety of his grandparents offered in exchange for handing over his foolish parents to Marley. Now, in that shot, you have the grandparents with Zeke, but also you have this guy that's crying. And in the manga, you have like a close-up of this guy crying. And it's like, who the fuck is this fucking asshole? Now, I can tell you that it's the guy from the last episode that Grisha bumped into. It's the same guy. His name is Xavier with an X. Is it the other guy from a couple of minutes ago? I don't fucking know. And he was called Mysterious Man in the character encyclopedia. So we were like, oh, is this like going to be important or something? I just want to ask you, are you noticing like anything like interesting with this guy? Like anything like something like crazy about this guy? Are you noticing something? You know, I don't know. Maybe I am. I've noticed like something. You know, we made theories immediately with this guy when this chapter came out, but like I can't point them out because I know it's been confirmed. We were right. Anyway, a change in the anime is that after they're being captured, we see Grisha being tortured, and it looks like it doesn't have a dick, by the way, which is yikes, and it's very interesting that he was sterilized. Anyway, the Marley soldiers are asking, hey, like, who is the owl? And Grisha's like, dude, I told you, I don't know. Like, literally nobody knows. And they're just cutting his fingers, and it's super gross in the manga. And what's interesting, it is so good and so ironic, they remove this, is that in the anime, it's like very brief. The owl is just there listening, and that's it. In the manga, the owl, Kruger, just opens the door, is like, hey, man, so you got anything? We still don't know the owl's identity. And there's like this specific panel where they're just describing the owl. And the panel is just a bunch of speech bubbles, and Kruger is just in the middle. And you're reading the first time, you don't know that this guy is the owl. That is the foreshadowing that Deisema does. It's the best example. It's in your face, and you're like, huh. Oh, shit, wait. But yeah, let me just read the panel. The owl. What a terrifying state of affairs. To think there was someone organizing the Eldia restorationists from inside our own government. Not only that, he was sending little kids to act as his spies, Zeke, to become Marley warriors. He even had a plan to steal the founding titan from the island of Paratus and undermine Marley's titan forces. And this is where there's like a very interesting cut. Guys, listen, even manga readers, this might be a clue. While that was going on, they even managed to bring the founding titan as a way to call for support and defection from Marley's enemy nation to the east. An enemy in the east? What kind of enemy in the east is there for Marley? Would have been in Asia if his kid didn't inform them. Time for a boat ride. We're going to paradise, and we actually have a boat going in there. So, couple things. We know this guy Kruger is the owl. Very cool, very nice. How the hell did he get those documents? I don't know. How the hell did he got this titan? I don't know. And now we're talking about enemy in the east. It's very likely that Kruger was not working alone. There's other people working with him. But anyway, we have arrived in Press, and there's a desert. You know, I actually didn't expect it to be so much sand in the manga. I thought it was just a little bit, but there's a lot of sand. It looks like a goddamn desert, which is pretty surprising. This is where the aliens are sent to. Kind of seems like a waste of resources, to be perfectly honest with you. Why would you send people to die in this boat ride? I don't know, it's kind of dumb. Anyway, Grisha recognizes this guy. He's like, oh dude, we're there on that day, which is the title of this episode. Then you have Grisha coming in. He's like, oh my god, don't kill me, don't turn into a titan. And then he hears Grisha, and he's just yelling about Grisha. Why did he trust you? Why did he fucking listen to you? Like, how the fuck is your own child like betraying you, bro? Like, what the fuck did you do? And all Grisha has to say is, I'm sorry. And he's like, fuck, and he starts crying. And then Gross shows up, kicks this fucking guy, and the fall doesn't kill him. The sand dunes down there, we want to be sure it's hard to die from a fall, even a 30+ meter one. And specifically, that is because they want to have these guys fall to run away from the wall, so that when the next people that turn into titans, they are not trying to be close to the wall and instead chasing this guy. Get the titans away from them. Anyway, everyone else is injected with the juice. Everyone else transforms into a titan, and we have a bunch of familiar faces for sure that start chasing Grice. And Kruger doesn't inject Grisha yet, and this is where Dina shows up and is like, oh shit, it's you, what the fuck? But why are you here? I make sure I told everyone that you had royal... And then Kruger immediately shuts him down. The implication here is that Kruger wants to cover that up, the information that this girl has royal blood. But more importantly is the fact that if Grisha said, I told you all about her, and at that moment he didn't recognize the owl, that means he said to other people this information. And if that's the case, that means that Kruger, this guy might have killed some Marley warriors that Grisha told this information. You know what I mean? Unless Grisha told this to Kruger, which I don't think so, because he didn't recognize him only until now. Anyway, he hoped that this information would have made him not kill Dina, and unfortunately, she's gonna get injected, and the last words are, no matter what I become, don't worry, I'll find you. She was smiling, or something, when she turned into a titan, and that's why she turned into the smiling titan, or something. But yeah, she is that titan. Grisha's first wife is the one that kills the second wife. This is a whole plot point that is actually very important, very relevant to the future of Attack on Titan. I'm not gonna say anything right now, because the next episode is gonna talk about it. Anyway, this is what makes Eren in the present wake up. So apparently what we've been seeing was actually a mixture of the books that Grisha written, but also Eren's memories. In the anime, Eren wakes up, he's like, who am I? Where am I? Like, what's going on? And Armin explains that you are in the cell because you were violating military laws. Gas is there too, her hair, you know. Her hair is better than mine. Armin in the anime is like, you said who am I? And it's like, that, it doesn't make any sense. But don't worry, the official manga translation is even worse, where he says, hey, I heard a woman's voice. Was that you? It makes no sense. So what the fuck is going on with this scene? It makes no sense in any translation. Well, in Japanese, Eren says watashi. Watashi is like is a way to address yourself, but it's like more formal, more correct. And Eren's not the guy that would do that. He's more brash, he's more hot-headed. He would say ore, which is more cool, definitely more boyish. And Armin's like, you said watashi, you would say ore, right? He thinks that's weird. So what's going on? Basically, Eren's talking like Grisha. And then Mikasa like, yeah, he said that. I heard that too. Like, why are you crying, Eren? Are you having a nightmare? Eren says like, oh dude, I feel like I had the longest dream, which is pretty much what he said in the first episode when he had that crazy dream scene. And then Mikasa's like, are you crying? Oh my god, I'm crying. There's also a cut scene with Historia when she also said, oh, I feel like I had the longest dream. So every time there's these longest dreams, they're more like memories. I feel like that's a pattern here. That's what he says. It was not a dream. This was a memory. So maybe that scene in season 1 was a memory. Anyway, this confirms that everything in the Grisha's books was true, which means they already read it. And the Titan that ate Carla was Dina or Dina. And Gross is a piece of shit. He makes fun of that. It's like, oh, looks like Dina, like Grice. Ha ha ha. Very phony. And then Grisha's like, oh, you fucker. I recognize you finally. You were the guy that fed my 8-year-old little sister to dogs. And after hearing this shit, Gross tells all his soldiers to get out. And one of the things that was cut in the anime that I think is very fascinating is that you have like these soldiers going to the boat. The line that was cut that is very interesting is, Eldian are not, though, to think he's even putting his hands on 8-year-old girls. Even in Marley, you have soldiers that are like, hey man, I don't know about that guy. I don't know about killing little girls. I don't know about that. That's kind of overly fucked up, which is interesting. In this episode, you have this fucking cartoon evil man that is going to say some real things, but he's still like overly evil. And already you have the hints of not everyone is like that. And that is Attack on Titan. That Attack on Titan is gonna be a little bit more morally complex than just this fucking Gross guy. But yeah, let's talk about Gross. So the first thing that is very interesting is that Gross says that he's going to turn this guy into a 3-meter, 4-meter Titan, implying that he can control specifically what he's going to do. And essentially, he's going to have this guy and Grisha fight. And Grisha's like, yo, why are you doing this? And then we have like one of the craziest fucking scenes in Attack on Titan. Isayama begged for the anime staff to nail this scene because supposedly this guy is looking at the viewer. In the manga, I didn't necessarily get that vibe, but in the anime, absolutely, it's very uncomfortable and it's very long. You know, in the manga, it's like a page and a half of this guy looking at you, and in the anime, it's just this like, oh man, just stop looking at me. Now, there's a lot of things that were cut, but essentially, Grisha's like, why are you doing this? And it's like, oh, why? Well, because it's fun. It's fun to watch people get eaten by monsters. I think it's fucking cool. Maybe not everyone's gonna fucking like it, but you know, most people, now that they're living in peaceful times, they lack thrill, and they like watching brutality. They like watching violence. They like watching this shit. And you too, viewer, you like watching horrible things happening to people. You have an enjoyment of that because something is missing and you like to feel alive somehow. And this is how you do it. You see violence, right? He's calling you out. Isayama is calling you out. He's challenging you. And he also referenced the cruel world here. Even this fucking guy. But anyway, how you live with yourself when you're doing this shit? And he's just like, yeah, I see what you're saying. If what happened to your sister happened to my kids, yeah, that would be fucked up. I'm sure your sister didn't do anything wrong, right? And Grisha's like, yeah, she just wanted to see the blimp. She dreamed of riding it somewhere far away. And then Gross says, poor thing, if only she was an Eldian. And he points out to the Titan, that's what you are. That's your true form. Little Titan spinal fluid in your blood, and you become giant monsters. And you think you're humans? You're asking me how I feel guilty about hurting you or whatever? Well, you're not even humans. Why would I feel guilty? I'm not killing human beings. And in fact, if there's anyone that is the killer, is you, Grisha. What the fuck were you fuckers planning with the restoration? If you were successful, if you got the founding Titan, what the fuck were you going to do? You're going to kill a bunch of Marlyeans. Even Marlyeans that did nothing to your sister? That guy that you bumped into early in the episode? Does that guy deserve to die? Because that briefcase hurt you? The woman that was looking at you funny the other day? Does she deserve to die? And it's a slippery slope. And that's the whole point. Grisha was so blinded by his revenge, by his hatred, that he was saying some fucked up shit about how he was going to destroy Marley, how their ancestors were right, how a bad father he was to Zeke, that Zeke fucking betrayed him. So Gross asks back to him, how do you live with yourself? Do you not have guilt? And then Grisha's like, oh, it's all a lie. I know the truth. our sister Ymir, she did like these cool things. Marley's the one that's creating propaganda and distorting history, which is not really good at replying. I think what Attack on Titan is arguing is that whether that history is true or not, Marleyan history, Eldian history, it doesn't matter. The people in the present should not suffer for the sins of their fathers, but you shouldn't try to look for justification in your history. You probably did bad things, but you shouldn't suffer for it. But that's not how other people think. When you turn literally to a monster, people are not going to be a fan of that. Anyway, Gross starts pushing Grisha, and this is how the owl comes in and pushes Fatso over here. And he falls off, and you have this shot with the previous Titan looking at him, and it's very similar to the shot from Season 1, because this is the same Titan that was going to eat Mina Carolina. But yeah, the owl reveals himself, and he asks him, hey, so was this as fun as he was making it out to be? Titans are eating humans and stuff, like is that cool? And then he's like, watch and learn, Grisha, this is how you use the power of the Titans, and he uses a knife, and he cuts his hand, and he turns into a Titan. Now, number one, yes, he looks like Eren's Titan, which means that it's very likely that Grisha has to eat this guy to become a shifter himself, and then Eren gets this Titan, which is why he looks very similar to this. Yes, that's a full implication. But more importantly, is how he's like, oh, I'm going to teach you how to use the Titan powers, and he cuts his hand. Grisha doesn't do that. Grisha instead stabs his hand, which is pretty dumb. Then you have Freyda and Eren, who bites their hand. Eren would learn this from her. The interesting thing about Gross's mentality about, oh, it's okay for me to kill you Eldians because you're not even human, is that this level of dehumanization for your enemies is something that a lot of people do. A lot of soldiers, for example, they have to do that to cope mentally with what they have to do. But specifically in the series of Attack on Titan, there's been a character that expressed similar thoughts, and that's Eren. Eren, when he killed those traffickers that were kidnapping Mikasa, he said they're animals disguised as humans who needed to be put down. This is our main character that is dehumanizing these evil fuckers. Was he correct in killing those guys? Probably, you know, like they were going to do bad things to this little girl. And they already did, you know, with their family. But like, it's the same thing. Dehumanizing your enemies. It's the same behavior. So imagine Grisha listening to his own kid saying this shit. Other things to talk about, I kind of forgot to mention how I talked about a couple of episodes before about a plot hole in Attack on Titan, how Zeke was saying King Rice, and I was like, hey, that's not King Rice, because the royal family, the real name is Fritz, and they came in there and they convinced the people that could not be affected by the Fallen Titan powers to stay in silence and collaborate with them, and that's why they get like these higher positions. They put a figurehead family, the fake Fritz family, ruling the walls, and the real Fritz family, which is the race, they were hiding. How does Zeke know about King Race? That was not publicly known information, that was secret. Reiner, Bertolt, and Annie were absolutely trying to find out this information, and they got very close, according to the manga, later on. But according to Season 2, when the story reveals herself, there's no reaction shots with them like, oh my god, Race! No, there's nothing like that. All they know is that the Race is an important wall-list family. That's the extent of what they know. Unless the anime changed the dialogue to imply that they knew, they didn't actually knew that the Race were royal family. You would assume that Reiner and Bertolt knew, and then they told Zeke. But even if Zeke somehow knew, Zeke would still say King Fritz. Another thing is, there was an intermission card talking about Marley, talk about how they spoke the same language. That is also another thing that I was talking about, which is the fact that Zeke was, when he was playing baseball, he was saying perfect game, and that is a baseball term, yes. But like, I was speaking about how he's saying the English language, like, which is weird. Now that the world has been revealed, I can tell you that the world of Attack on Titan is not literally like our world. That Madagascar is a little too big, because according to official measurements that we have of the walls would not fit Madagascar. In fact, Wall Sina cannot fit inside Madagascar, let alone the others. So either Madagascar is pretty big, or the official measurements that we have of the walls is wrong. I actually want to believe in that one specifically, because the horses in Attack on Titan, they reach like ludicrous speeds. So I feel like that one makes more sense. Having said that, there is no nation called Marley in our world, I think. So it's hard for me to assume that there's an England in Attack on Titan for the English language to exist. I think it's kind of weird, and I think it's more of one of those things where you shouldn't be really think about it too hard. It's more of a fourth wall joke. And speaking of fourth walls, Grisha and Kruger and Gross and whatever, they are, I guess, technically atop of the fourth wall. Another thing is Liberio. That really doesn't sound like a German name, does it? So a lot of people want to put the Jew and Nazi perspective into Attack on Titan, but then you have like names like Liberio. It's like, that's not really German. So let's talk about that. Now that we know the truth of Attack on Titan, there's a lot of reactions that a lot of people had throughout the years. And at the time, I didn't really think about the implications of using Holocaust imagery, if that was correct, if that is wrong, if that is racist, if that's anti-Semitic. Like, I never thought about that kind of stuff initially. But then I started seeing people arguing about that stuff throughout the years, and I thought that was like incredibly fascinating. Now, if you come to someone and are like, hey man, remember Attack on Titan? Yeah, the Titans are Jews. It's like, whoa, what the fuck? That sounds fucked up. That sounds anti-Semitic. But that is ignoring the fact that the main characters themselves are Jews and they're sympathetic. You love them and you support them. And they go through this oppression, and the oppression is portrayed as a bad thing. You're right, the Marlyeans are not portrayed as the guys in the rights, even though they are rights in terms of like, oh, they literally turn into monsters, so like that's justifiable racism, I guess. But I feel like looking into Attack on Titan as like just Nazis and Jews, that is incredibly reductive. The Eldians are not just Jews. The story of Attack on Titan is not just a fight for oppression. The story of Attack on Titan is how the fight for oppression is not inherently a good thing. The oppressed can become the oppressors if they're not careful, because this is whole a cycle of revenge, of hatred, of pain. You made me feel like this, now you're gonna feel like that, okay? Attack on Titan has a whole lot more to say than just, oh my god, I'm being oppressed, and we fight and we win and we're done, okay? This episode was criticizing Grisha. He was becoming a bad person throughout this entire episode, and he himself is reflecting. It's like, yeah, I was not correct in my actions. I was a bad father. I was like, yeah, let's destroy Marley. Destroy a lot of people that didn't actually do anything to me. Is oppression not good? Should you not fight back? Yeah, you should fight back, but you need to be careful. So if you look into Attack on Titan as Jews and Nazis, then yeah, it really does seem a little bit anti-Semitic or just really suspicious, because in this story, the Jews fighting back is kind of like portrayed as like a more morally gray thing. But the thing is that they're not just Jews, because unlike Jews, the Eldians might have done bad things in the past, and they can literally turn into monsters. The Jews are innocent, the Eldians might not be. It would be dishonest of me to deny the similarities to the Holocaust, of course. But there's more. The people in the walls, for example, you can correlate a lot of their stuff with Japanese history and how isolated they were with technology and stuff. And I saw this girl named Animiya Chan or something. And I'm not one to watch like reaction videos, but this was recommended on the subreddit, and I was like, oh shit, interesting. And this girl, by the way, she's really cute. Hell yeah. But she was precisely the stuff that I wanted to talk about, like the stuff that I thought was fascinating. Is she talked about how she was relating to the Eldians because she was in South Africa or something, and there was events that white people were being discriminated by the black people because of what the white people did in the past. And then she's like, yo, the white people did nothing now, like that is not okay. She herself like gave like examples, right, that than just, oh, Jews and Nazis, and it's so incredibly reductive. So when I see the Polygon talking about the fascist subtext of Attack on Titan can't go overlooked, it's like, yes, I wanted this, I wanted to talk about this. I don't want to dismiss this. You know, I think it's interesting. I think the fact that we can have these conversations about Attack on Titan like raises Attack on Titan to an even higher status. Attack on Titan was already good, and this just, whoa. But unfortunately, the Polygon article is really more of a hit piece, and it's very uninformed, and it's just more of a compilation of all arguments I've seen against Attack on Titan throughout the years. Instead of like something sincere and honest from, you know, the author Tom Spielman. It's not what I was looking for. Initially, I was like, yo, what the fuck? The Jews are like the Eldians and they're good guys. What the hell? But I started to think more. Portraying the whole scenario as a gray instead of black and whites, maybe that's kind of suspicious, you know? Maybe that's kind of anti-Semitic. Maybe that's not okay. Is Attack on Titan promoting fascism and stuff like that? Probably not. But I feel like these conversations are interesting, you know? And I've seen good discussion come from this. But the Polygon article specifically was something that I was just like, God damn it, you're not being honest here. You're not really saying something that is interesting. And they're wrong in some aspects. They're like just like talking about the stories, like, that's not a thing. You're dishonest. Anyway, I enjoy this a lot. I enjoy this conversation that we can have about the show. I really enjoy that girl talking about it. But I want more of this. I want more conversations about this. Like, what do you think? Is it okay? Do you think it's like problematic to recur to Holocaust imagery when your story is not about Holocaust stuff? Or do you think it's like smart that with one panel, immediately you know what's going on? Like with visual medium, there's no words, and it's like, oh, okay, like I understand what's happening. They're being oppressed. They're like Jews, but they're not literally Jews. They're not as innocent as Jews. Aliens are not just Jews. They're also kind of Nazis because they might have done bad things in the past, like ethnic cleansing. That's something that the Nazis were doing. So Attack on Titan is a continuation of like, okay, we defeated the big evil empire, the big Nazis. Now what? Well, now it's okay to hate the Nazis. They're being mean, right? And the Attack on Titan was more about how this is just wrong. When is this gonna stop? When is this shit gonna end? We need to stop acting like this. We need to stop discriminating people. We need to stop putting labels on people. We need to stop this whole fucking cycle of revenge and hatred and discrimination. But it's hard and we can't because it's happening so many times and it's a cycle. It's a fucking cycle. Literally in Attack on Titan. Like apparently Marley was ruling and then Ymir did her stuff and then Eldia ruled and now Marley again. It's just it's a little cycle. Okay, so obviously this video is freaking long, but even then, I forgot to mention some stuff. I wanted to elaborate a little bit more on the idea that, yes, violence and this cycle is really bad, but it's not like the story of Attack on Titan is going to turn into Kumbaya, my lord, and everyone's going to sing and be happy forever. Attack on Titan is still a story about fighting, right? And fighting and violence is going to be important. It's going to be, in fact, necessary. And the best way to look into this whole topic is to compare it with Kenny and Uri's relationship, because I feel like that relationship is like a microcosm of Eldia's relationship with the rest of the world. So if you remember, in Kenny's flashback, the first time they meet, Kenny's trying to kill Uri, and Uri fights back, but then he apologizes. And then like a couple of scenes later on, they're at the lake and they're talking, and Uri's like, hey Kenny, like, how do we have this friendship? Like, what happened? What kind of miracle was going on? Like, he's trying to understand that, and he says something like, I want to believe in that miracle again. I want to believe that something like this is possible. And now we have this full context of the aliens, and I think that was the whole point, that Uri, possessed by the king, by the way, he wants to believe that someday it's possible that Eldians and the other people, you know, Marlyeans and stuff, they can coexist together one day, right? And he's like, hey Kenny, like, what happened? How did we manage to have this beautiful legitimate friendship, by the way? Kenny legitimately likes Uri, but yeah, how do we do that? And he's like, was it violence? You know, was it the fact that we attacked each other? And Kenny, all he says is like, yeah, I mean, like, if you didn't attack me, I would have fucking killed you. And that's precisely it. I think Isayama is saying that you can't be weak towards your enemies, right? You can't, for enemies that hate you, you can't just be submissive. Like, you need to have a position of power somewhat, right? You need to have strength, not to be evil, not to threaten, but at the same time, you can't be, like, non-threatening. Because if the people hate you, they will kill you, right? And I think that's the whole point, right? You need to have a certain position of power to impose respect, and then you can apologize or just, you know, say, hey man, I'm not gonna hurt you, but hey, just so you know. And I think this is actually really important, and it relates actually to manga stuff right now, right? But can't really elaborate a whole lot more on that. So yeah, sorry about this. Anyway, that's it. My throat hurts and I'm just I need to fucking stop. I need to drink some water and just rest. I know this video is probably gonna be really long. I already can tell this is gonna be a nightmare to edit. So I apologize, you know, but there's so many things to talk about, and I hope that you like this video. I hope that you know, I made some things clear, or just gave you some food for thought or something. Again, I just can't wait to go back to do manga chapter reviews, because a month to do a review is way more appealing than just a week. I know I'm not writing, you know, scripts or whatever. I'm just like speaking all this random shit. It's so scatterbrained. There's so many topics, and I need to drink water really bad. And so, you know, that's it. Hope you can like this video and you can share it with other people, and subscribe, by the way, because I feel like I'm really close to hitting 700 subscribers, and I just don't want to see that 69 in the corner of the screen anymore. Just please, just either like do a massive unsubscribe from me or subscribe. You know, the 69 that needs to stop. Okay, time to stop. Get that away from my screen, and that's it. Okay, next episode is gonna be pretty crazy. Hopefully, there's not gonna be as many cuts. Anyway, I'll see you later, and subscribe to take the 69, please. I swear to God, I please.